Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Tyranny with me, Bring It On. So it looks like the recruits that you hire appear if you just reload into the game. You don't actually have to leave the spire and then come back for them to show up. So, either way, we're going to speak to Siren.
Good day, Fatebinder.
Siren nods to you.
What do you need?
I would know more about you. What do you want to know? Tell me about your homeland. What is there to say? It's a fuzzy memory hardly worth recalling. I was born in a northern farming village without a name. That's how out of the way we were. A bunch of families ended up settling near each other, and that was my village. It was about 20 miles from Shadow's Rest. You probably haven't heard of that either. We were farmers, poor and isolated. Nothing about my home or past is worth dwelling on, Fatebinder. I barely remember my father. My mother is dead. The only thing people ever wanted from me was my song. The girl's powerful. Bring the Songbird. We need a blessing. Our crops are withering. What has that woman done? Her voice falters to the last statement as she shivers a little. Nothing in your past is worth dwelling on. It looks to me like you remember something. I suppose when an angry mob that fears you and what you can do stones your mother to death while she shields you with your body, it sticks with you. What do you remember about your family? The good thing about being taken from home when you're still a child is you can't miss the childhood you never got. What do you want to know? You were taken from your family? Technically, by the time I was taken, there was no family left to be taken from. But Kyros' forces had gotten word of my talents, and decided I was better used taking over the world than helping local farmers. You have no family left. What happened? What do you think? They're dead. My father might not have cared about me, about us, but my mother would never have let anyone take me while she lived. Without anyone to protect me, I was whisked off to Kyros' court. How do you describe your father? Worthless? Hopeless? Devoid of human emotion? Sometimes I feel like we were complete opposites. He seemed incapable of feeling anything, and I seemed to be nothing but raw emotion. Do not let it slip that my father sold me to Kyros, and was responsible for my mother's death. Someone had to egg the crowd on, and someone had to tell Kyros' men where I was. Not that it matters. He's dead, and I'm better off without him. What do you remember about your mother? She's dead, so I don't have much to remember. She loved me, that much I know, but sometimes I wonder if what she felt was love or fear. Fear for me, or of me. Sometimes I don't think there was a difference between the two. My mother loved me when no one else did, when no one else could. The world wanted nothing but my voice. All my mother wanted was my happiness. She was the only person in my life that did. Tell me about your mother's death. No, Fatebinder, I can't. Please, don't make me talk about it. Her voice trembles and tears well up in her eyes. Okay, Siren, I'll never ask you to tell me that story. Thank you. There's some things that are just too painful to remember. Tell me about your father's death. He disappeared after my mother died and I was kidnapped. I didn't hear anything about him for the longest time, so I assumed he had disappeared and I would never see him again. Then someone brought word that he'd been found. He killed himself, and now he's out of my life. For someone who always has a lot to say, that was incredibly succinct. Is there more? Relentless Fatebinder. Did you ever think maybe there are some things I want to keep to myself? But yes, you're right. There's more to the story. When I got word he'd been found, I had summoned him to Kyros' court. I wanted to see the man who had condemned me to the life I was leading. When he arrived, I went to see him privately. I wasn't sure what I would feel. Anger? Hatred? I didn't expect apathy. For the first time in my life, I felt nothing. Standing there, staring at the man who ruined my life, waiting for him to notice me, my heart was dull and disinterested. Then he looked up and smiled. He smiled when he saw me. Can you believe that? He smiled and opened his arms to hug me, and it felt like someone reached into my chest and squeezed my heart, sending hate flooding through my veins. I sang him a song. I told him how tired he looked, how haggard he seemed. I spoke of the weariness he must feel, the guilt that surely plagued him every day. I asked how he withstood the weight of his betrayal. The burden must be too much to bear. I watched the tears roll down his cheeks as he pulled the dagger from his belt. The sobs that tore from him as he held it before him, thinking about his wife and child. The look of ecstatic relief on his face as he dragged the blade across his neck. Yeah, he got what he deserved, Siren. That's what I tell myself, and for the most part I believe it. I can't help but wonder what terrible things he did in the 5 years after he vanished. What I might have prevented if he'd only been around to hear me in the morning my mother died. Now you know what happened to my father. As I told you before, he killed himself. And that's it. Do you have any siblings? No. I was close to a boy in my village for a time, but his mother stopped letting me play with him when everyone realized what my powers were. That's the closest thing I ever had to a living sibling. A dour expression clouds her face. A living sibling. My brother died very young. I never knew him, so I hardly count him as a sibling. Life in the middle of nowhere is difficult. For a single child to survive, let alone more, is a testament to the parents. She looks at you for a time, her lips a thin line. Her eyes grow red and tears form on her lids. Finally she nods slowly and breaks her silence. I remember my mother talking about getting me a little brother. It wasn't long after I started singing my power started growing. She told me that soon it would be too hard for her to travel with me. Siren, sweetie, she said. You have to go with your daddy. It wouldn't be good for the baby if I kept traveling like that. Maybe after your brother is out here with us, we can all travel together. Siren looks out to the horizon, her voice breaking. You didn't like traveling with your father? No. All he wanted was the money. When we were on the road, he completely ignored me. I was simply something to earn rings with. A tool. The farmers in my village used their rakes and wagons. My father used my voice. Everyone wanted the Songbird to sing for them, and they paid us so much money. So we went. But I didn't want to go without my mother. She was the only real comfort I had. When I was with her, I felt safe. Nothing could hurt me. There was a trip coming up, and I knew she wouldn't be going. I couldn't bear the thought of all those days in the care of my father. Her voice breaks again as she closes her eyes. So I sang to my baby brother. I told him we were all waiting for him. I told him we needed to be a family so we could travel together. I told him he should come out now. I don't know if I meant for it to happen, but I sang the words no one can resist my voice. My mother's screams cut the song short, and the blood, it was everywhere. I was dragged from the room, but I don't remember who took me. I remember staring at my foot for the rest of the afternoon. The pattern soaked into my shoe, the splatter across the tops of my toes. I couldn't bring myself to clean it off. I just looked at it. How long had your mother been pregnant? Not long enough for my brother to survive. Maybe he could have. I don't know. The problem is, when I told him he had to come out, I didn't mean I wanted him out alive. I don't think he would have survived even if it was time for my mother to give birth. People came and went all day. There was a lot of crying, and nobody looked at me the same way after that. My mother told me that things like this happen all the time, but even at 5, I knew what I had done, and part of me was happy. I wanted my mother back, and I got her. She still loved me. She died protecting me, but I terrified her. Every time I opened my mouth, I could see her flinch. And after my brother died, she was never around when I sang. She couldn't bear to watch me. Let's talk about something else. What do you want to know? How long have you been practicing magic? Always. I have no memory of being without the power. It has been my driving force, and I am who I am because of it. Every defining moment of my life is because of my voice and the power behind it. I have become what it made me, and it is what I have done with it. Tell me about your time with the voices of Narat. What do you want to know? How did you meet Narat? I met it when I was unceremoniously dumped on its doorstep by Kyros. All I felt toward it since the moment I saw it was sheer hatred. When one person tires of me, they just hand me off to another. I seem to be quite the handful. No one is truly prepared to deal with me, I suppose. I was its possession for 3 years, stuck doing what it wanted until you came along and started messing around with Kyros' plans. Why did Kyros give you to Narat? I made the mistake of trying my song on Kyros, and forgiveness isn't exactly in the Overlord's vocabulary. That's interesting. Interestingly enough, I think it almost worked. Can you imagine how differently things would have turned out if I had a little more practice? I was brought out at one of the many lavish gatherings thrown at the palace. Kyros loved showing me off. You know, impressing the gathered elite. So I performed. I sang, I danced, I convinced people to join in. Then, in the middle of it all, I had a brilliant idea to work one more performance into the show. Something that would be the ultimate end to the evening. I added a counterpoint to my song and directed it at Kyros. In it, I mentioned that it might be in everyone's best interest if Kyros ended up impaled on a sword. Honestly didn't think it would work, but why not try, right? It went as far as Kyros unsheathing one of the Royal Guard swords, but then everything stopped. Holy crap, this is not behind any skill checks or anything, just this story where she almost had Kyros kill him or herself. I don't know why. It was probably me. I got too excited and lost my control. But whatever the reason, Kyros was suddenly out of my control and let out a terrible shout. So she would have succeeded had she not lost control. Holy crap. Huh, okay. Weren't you afraid of getting caught? Of course I was. I've seen how the world works, especially Kyros' world. People don't live long when they're disposed of. It's violent and sudden. I figured I was dead anyway, so why not try to rid the world of a horrible threat? Really? You're trying to save the world? Fine. I was trying to save my own skin. Happy? I was 12, so forgive me if preservation was in the front of my mind. Oh look, a young lady who thinks of nothing but herself. Do you want to hear this story or not? Go on. Everyone stared, frozen by the yell echoing back at us. Kyros quickly recovered and gave the appearance of cheering us on, but I was convinced I was about to die. Interestingly, my execution never came. I finally realized I couldn't have been punished at the party, because Kyros would have to admit I had exerted my will onto the Overlord. Without a good reason to call for my death, I couldn't have been executed afterward. I was the Songbird. I did nothing but spread Kyros' will and gather the armies. Would you execute your best and most loved recruiting tool? So Kyros worked with Nerat, and they gave me this helmet to bring me back in line. Then I was handed over to Nerat, that monster, because it is the one thing in the world I cannot control. Present company excluded, Fatebinder. Why can't you control him? I've been inside his mind time after time, and I've never been able to get a handle on what's going on in there. Every time I talk to it, I feel like a different person is talking to me. And every one of them wants something different. And one in particular wants something it's never, ever going to get. What has Nerat had you do for him? Now, if that isn't the question that goes right into the heart of this storm, I think you should ask me what it hasn't had me do, or at least tried to make me do. Wait a minute. What does Nerat want from you that he's never going to get? Come on, Fatebinder. You can't be that naive. I'm still a child and I know about adult urgings, as one of my old teachers so clumsily put it. Somewhere inside that chaotic mind, I saw the most depraved and disturbing desires I had the misfortune of feeling. No matter what Nerat says to you, do not trust it. That will always end badly. Well, I'm glad I sided against Nerat then. Let's see about something else. Tell me more about that headdress. It's the bane of my existence. It's something that's incredibly painful to talk about. So why not? She shrugs. What does it do? Makes me impotent. Do you have any idea what it's like to have a hurricane raging inside you? To feel the gale crashing against you, to be released, but only feel a gentle summer's breeze. Kyros and Nerat made it just for me. If I attempt anything more powerful than a simple tune, it will kill me. Isn't that simply wonderful? Honestly, to be so terrified of a mere child. Why do you have it? I might have tried to kill Kyros once. He and Nerat decided I posed too much of a threat, so they muzzled me. I was their attack dog, and they pulled out my teeth. You can hardly be surprised if the dog tries to bite you, if that's all you teach him to do. Why can't you simply take it off? Gee, Fatebinder, I never thought of that. Here, could you unclasp it for me so I can get out of it? Besides, because I'll die if it isn't removed removed the proper way, you simpleton. Do you think I'd leave it on otherwise? If you can't take it off, then why do you try to get me to remove it when we met? How can someone so powerful be so stupid? I knew you wouldn't be able to remove it. That's not what I was trying to do. You're a Fatebinder. You honestly think I was going to pass up the opportunity to try and control a Fatebinder? How do you know you'll die if you remove the helmet? Because I doubt Nerat and Kyros would go through all the trouble just to play a trick on me. Something this subtle, elaborate, and long-lasting isn't really their style. At least not Nerat's. Plus Nerat told me the helmet would kill me if I removed it. And while it might be a lying monster, it loves telling the truth if the truth causes an extra bit of pain. You believe Nerat. Maybe he's just toying with you. Have you tried removing it? I'm not going to risk my continued existence on a maybe. Plus, I already tried, when they first put it on me. I got one of the worst headaches I've ever had, so I'll leave it where it is for now. What would it take to remove it? Someone beating the information out of Nerat or Kyros. They're the only ones who know how it was constructed and how it works. I may ask people to remove it, but I know they won't be able to. That's not going to stop me from trying, though. Why the headdress? Why not use magic to gag you? They tried magic. It didn't really work. The problem is, spells can be broken. Counter spells can be found, guards can be bribed. People can have accidents. Nerat and Kyros are the only ones who know how to remove this without killing me. The answer is locked somewhere in Nerat's insane and Kyros' currently not conveniently located heads. Talk about something else. Talk about something else.
What do you need?
You have a way with words, Siren. Were you instructed on how to speak with others? Of course. One of the only good things that came out of my time with Kyros was my education. My teachers insisted I be trained on the proper way to speak with the royal court. I was frequently mistaken for someone older, so I think I got away with a lot more than I could have otherwise. For all their failings, they made sure I was properly educated. My favorite class was learning how to talk people into doing what you wanted without using magic. Can you believe that? Why in the world would you risk it? But it was a fascinating subject. Could you teach me some tricks? Certainly, Fatebinder. I don't remember how much of my training I'll remember, but I'm sure I could help you out. She leans close, and in the softest of caresses, her lips brush your ear. Words are sounds indiscriminate to the human ear, a language not meant to be understood by any but the archon of song, beyond the breadth of discernment, but inescapably compelling, are binding, gut-wrenchingly painful in a single lift, then euphorically fulfilling a mere intone later. You blink and realize the muzzy, spine-tingling murmuring in your ear has fallen silent. Siren draws back with a satisfied sigh, beaming at you, and the perfect image of a sigil, the identification of her name, brands itself into the depths of your mind. Sigil of emotions.
Good day, Fatebinder. What do you need? What do you need?
Cool. Hey, new magic. So Lantry teaches a magic, and Siren teaches a magic, and Eb teaches a magic. Do you know anything about what's going on in the tiers? I know a great deal about what's going on here, considering I'm the root cause of at least half of it. What do you want to know? How long have you been here? Since the beginning of the occupation. Kyros wanted me out of sight, but still in use. So I was given to Nerat. It used me to gather fodder for the course. What do you think about Tunon? He makes me uncomfortable. There's nothing behind that mask. It's dark and empty. What do you mean? Everyone has a presence. It's how my magic works. I reach into them and convince their presence to do what I want. He has no presence. When I reached into him, there was nothing. It was bleak. I never want to feel that again. If you have to reach into someone's mind to control them, how do you influence entire armies to do what you want? I can't influence an army, but I can persuade them to feel the way I want them to. If I want to get someone to do a specific thing for me, I have to get inside their head, and that requires a lot more effort. No one can keep me out, but if they're aware of what I'm doing, I can't force them to do anything. At least, not with this thing on my head. She knocks a hand against her helmet. Go away. There we go. Really, I don't know how it works. It just does. You might as well ask me where lightning comes from. I want to know about Kyros. What do you want to know? How did you come to work for Kyros? After my father betrayed me and got my mother killed, I was taken by Kyros' men. I honestly don't know where we went, other than it seemed to take forever to get there. Then I was put in school. It was a wonderful and horrible time. I learned how to control and maximize my power, but they underestimated my abilities, or overestimated theirs. I think it was more the latter than the former. They unleashed my true power. Did they believe I wouldn't try to run with it? They tried to train and mold me, and in that they succeeded. They also tried to brainwash and break me, and in that they failed spectacularly, but I was punished for it. Why were you punished? They assumed my abilities were exaggerated. They were powerful mages who had spent years training at their art. How could a little girl ever hope to rival their prowess? I grew tired of their condescension. Condescension. I hated them for treating me like a child. Their rules, their discipline, their training. They'd killed my mother, and I'd make them pay for it. One day, I got bored in class. The teacher's droning voice was putting me to sleep in the afternoon heat, so I thought I'd have a little fun. He was distracted, and he let his defenses down. He didn't consider me a threat. how do you know his defenses were down? I can just feel it. If someone is alert or aware of what's going on, it's a lot harder to get inside. But I know when they're vulnerable. I know how to take advantage of the opening and climb right in. Well, go on. I started humming. Nothing that would attract his attention, of course. A lullaby my mother sang to me. Fitting, I thought, to invade this man's mind with a song taught to me by the woman they destroyed. I could tell I'd gotten inside him when he slowed down, ever so slightly. I started singing wordlessly, standing, working in hand motions. They were completely unnecessary, but I'd been trained to be a performer. Then I worked it in my words. The window, I sang to him. Look, what's at the window? He turned entranced and stared outside, his mouth moving silently as he dreamed an answer to my question. What's out there? I asked him through my song. What could that be? I was elated. The fool had left himself alone and vulnerable, and this 8-year-old had dominated his mind. He walked through the window, intently staring at something I couldn't see. You made him jump, didn't you? Of course. I didn't mean for him to fall. He was looking out the window and reached up as if to touch whatever he was looking at, and before I could stop him, he was gone. It looked like he was trying to catch something as he fell from sight. I won't say I'm sorry he died. He was a horrible man, but I didn't mean to do it. However, I was elated. The taste of power was intoxicating. I didn't get to taste it again for a long time. How were you punished? They wanted to cut out my tongue. Even at 8, I didn't blame them. It's what I would have done. But Kyros said no, doing possibly the one kind act she ever did for me. Without the power of speech, I was essentially useless. Okay, so I think... Does this not confirm that Kyros is a woman? Siren has been in the presence of Kyros. At court. So they muzzled me. They knew simply holding my mouth shut wasn't going to be sufficient, so they got creative. Using sage magic, they put my voice in stasis when I wasn't in class. I could go through the motions of speech, but nothing came out. Oh, did they take pleasure in it? Between classes, they gave me chores. They berated me. They beat me. I was their slave. The only reason I lived was by Kyros' whim, but I was tortured by everyone else's. There were at least 2 teachers in my classes after the incident, and I was always accompanied by 2 guards, both of whom had been deafened, so I couldn't affect them. I accidentally killed one man, and they were acting like I destroyed a realm. I suppose that's what they thought I'd do next. And who knows? Maybe that's what I'm about to do. What was life like with Kyros? For several years, I was surrounded by people who would smile to my face and sneer when I turned away. They were supposed to be my mentors, my teachers, but all they did was resent me. They taught me to refine and control my voice. My power became more directed, more powerful, more subtle. I no longer needed to specifically say what I wanted people to do. I could just think what I wanted, how I felt, and the weaker the mind, the faster they would respond. It still required me to sing, or at the very least make music with my voice. But I could say one thing, that means something else entirely, and the magic worked. Everything was done for Kyros' edification. They asked for signs of her power, and I was used to bring them about. People praised my name, to the extent that it was allowed. But if the focus of adoration ever truly pointed toward me, it was quickly stifled. I didn't see much of Kyros. She was busy taking care of her affairs, but I was never allowed to forget by whose power I was allowed to exist. I was paraded around like the new jewel, and since I had real power, it took a while for the luster to fade. But when I tarnished, I corroded through, and when I stopped being a pleasant distraction, I was passed off to Narat to be forgotten. How long did you work for Kyros? 5 years. 2 years of dedicated training, 2 years with training interspersed with travel, performing miracles in Kyros' name, then a year being his pet. See, then she says his. What? Okay, cool. I can actually address it. Awesome. What do you think of Kyros? Honestly, I didn't really think of him at all at first. If I wasn't getting daily reminders that he owned me and could have killed me anytime he wanted, I would have completely forgotten he existed. Don't misunderstand me. I despise him. It's because of him I don't have a family. It's because of him my mother is dead. It's because of him I'm here instead of anywhere else. But as a child, I was kept too busy to interact with him much. Wait a minute. You've called Kyros both him and her. Did I? How clumsy of me. Must have been a slip of the tongue. She smiles mischievously. Is Kyros a man or a woman? You really don't know, do you? That's fascinating. I assumed a Fatebinder would have been given an audience with him. It doesn't seem like she let you perform actions in his name without speaking to you. That's part of the mystique, isn't it? If your enemies don't know anything about you, how can they properly plan? So why would Kyros let anything out that he didn't want the world to know? Tell me, Siren. No. A lady has to keep some secrets, and this is going to be mine. Feels good to have some power in this relationship. It's not going to matter once you defeat him anyway. She'll be gone. Okay. She did refer to Kyros as a woman first, though. I probably shouldn't read too much into that, because you can click the dialogue in any order you want, but still. Let's talk about something else. What can you tell me about the Scarlet Chorus? If I never talked to another chorus member in my entire life, I will consider it a success, no matter what else happens. She folds her arms across her chest and levels a steely gaze at you. Then I'm thrilled to turn your attempted success into a constant failure. I'll try to talk to you more often. Oh, verse. Anything that helps numb me to the droning sound of your voice. Now, do you mind? I'm speaking with the Fatebinder. What do you want to know? You weren't a member of the chorus. What? Absolutely not. The only reason I worked with them is because I was being forced to. Once Kyros had this monstrosity placed on my head, I really had no choice. I'm not powerful enough to force them to let me go, and they had the numbers to overwhelm me if I tried anything. So I did what I was told, until you showed up. What was it like working with them? Well, at first I was treated like a queen. I spent all my time recruiting. Let's be honest, the Scarlet Chorus isn't choosy, so it was easy to convince people to join. Toward the end, I actually started fearing for my life. With this thing on my head, I couldn't effectively control an entire army, so hobbling me was quite an intelligent thing for Kyros to do. If anyone had realized I couldn't hold all of them back, I would have been in big trouble. Your little stunt Avengerings couldn't have come at a better time. What do you think of them? I'd have thought my look of disgust kind of answered that question, Fatebinder. They're a worthless, hopeless, disorganized bunch of savages, who soon will tear themselves apart from the inside. And what's your opinion on their methods? They randomly grab anyone and anything they can get their hands on, and hope they'll work if they beat them enough. Sounds like the makings of a fantastic army to me. I'm repulsed by them and everything they do. Murat is a disgusting excuse for a leader, and I look forward to the day I can watch the life drain from its insane eyes. Am I being clear enough for you, Fatebinder? What do you know about the Disfavored? I really don't know much about them, Fatebinder. I never got a chance to work with them, so I don't think I'll be much help on this topic. What do you want to know? What do you think of Graven Ash? He seems capable enough. He's organized and truly seems to care about his men, contrary to practically everyone else I've met here. Have you seen them in action? Briefly, at a few of the battles during Kyros' conquest, but Murat liked to keep me locked up tight, so I never got a good look at them fighting. You never worked with them? Not directly. I've been used to inspire people occasionally, and the Disfavored were in those groups. But if you're looking for anything of merit from me on the Disfavored, I'm not going to be much use to you. What about the other groups in the tiers? Who do you want my opinion on? Tell me about the Stone Stalker tribe. Not even worthy of my attention. A beast is a beast. You can't ever make an animal be anything more than what it is. Tell me about the local rebel groups. What group do you want to talk about? Tell me about the Vengerine Guard. Are they even still pertinent? After the events of Vengerine's well, I would have thought no one would want to talk to them anymore. Tell me about the Unbroken. I haven't had much exposure to them. Ash was intent on dealing with that problem, so they didn't ask for my help. Tell me about the Bronze Brotherhood. They're not the most helpful people, but they seem like they want what's best for Lethian's Crossing. Plus, it was a lot easier for me to recruit my own followers with them around. I didn't have to worry about anyone being taken by the Scarlet Chorus or killed by the Disfavored. Tell me about any of the Mage Guilds. Generally, I don't like throwing in with other mages. I've not had a good experience with them in the past, so I keep my distance. And they're so demanding. You ask them, very nicely I might add, how to cast a spell, and they insist they're not a charity, and they're not going to hand over their secrets out of the goodness of their heart. Right, like there's anything good about that one. I didn't even use my magic on him. That's gratitude for you. She trails off and gives you an intent look. Something in your head feels like it's too small for your brain. She closes her eyes and takes a breath. The feeling dissipates. Who do you want to talk about? Tell me about the sages. I can't say I'm too happy with them, since it was their magic that bound my voice when I was a child. but they're an influential group with infinite knowledge. At least, they were. Can you imagine how powerful you could become if you had access to their collections? Tell me about the Earthshakers. Incredibly powerful, but strangely focused in their studies. Why do you want to pour your energy into one thing? Branch out. The magic they're missing out on is incredible. Tell me about the Forgebound. The group that Kyros used to make my hobble? The less I have to think about them, the better. They might be good craftsmen, but unless they craft me a way out of this prison, I'll let you deal with them. Thank you.
What do you need?
Okay. What do you think of your... Yeah, what do you think of your travel companions?
Are we trading in gossip now, Fatebinder? Or are you collecting information to use against us?
She arches her eyebrows inquisitively. She doesn't have a lot of voice-acted dialogue. Now that I'm thinking about it.
What do you want to know about?
Tell me about Barrick.
The walking ring pile? Let's hope you never have to go anywhere unnoticed. There's nothing particularly wrong with him, I suppose, but he doesn't seem overly bright. I mean, what kind of idiot do you have to be if you can't even take off your armor? Maybe he's pretty, but wrapped in that getup, who can tell?
She looks at Barrick, smiles, waves, and blows him a kiss.
What was that you said? I couldn't quite hear you.
Barrick grunts, turning to face Siren.
It's okay, Barrick. I didn't say anything about anyone important.
She speaks slowly and deliberately, patting him gently on the shoulder. She then puts her hand to her mouth, her hand to mouth, suppressing a small giggle.
I'll admit he can handle himself in a fight, but he could use a little more up here.
She taps the side of her head. Tell me about Ebb.
She's got some power in there, that's for sure. And as long as I'm crippled, I will, begrudgingly mind you, admit she could probably win if we were pitted against each other. Although I'm more than happy to give her a try. Are you game, Ebb? Think you could take me out?
I'm sorry, sweetie, I'm confused. Are you offering me a duel, or something a little more down and dirty?
Ebb winks at Siren, who turns a deep scarlet and looks away. I don't know how old Siren is, I don't know how appropriate. Nah.
You know what I meant!
Siren puts her hand on her headdress and looks at Ebb, showing on the corners of her mouth.
Oh, don't worry, dear. You're far too young for me. I like someone with a little wear and tear on them, and not just up here.
She puts her hands on her head and winks again.
Though I suppose I should watch myself around her. You never know how people will react to a challenge.
Tell me about Lantry.
I'm jealous of him. I've heard so much about the Vellum Citadel, and he actually got to see it before all the unpleasantness.
She trails off, a sour expression on her face, her wiggling fingers miming tiny explosions.
The sheer amount of power lost that day is only dwarfed by the amount of power required to cause the destruction, and the power to stop it. The sages have my respect. And, by extension, Lantry. Although, I'm not overly happy it was sage magic they used to bind my tongue when I was a child. I can hardly hold him responsible for that.
That's a very mature outlook.
How kind of you, my lady. It's heartening to hear that someone of your immense station considers a lowly sage like me to be worthy of your attention.
Lantry performs a deep bow to Siren.
Although not all sages are necessarily worthy of praise. Some are a little overly fond of excesses, of one kind or another.
She arches an eyebrow. I wonder if she's talking about Lantry's, ink hobby. Tell me about Verse.
That bitch? I'd walk her off the spire if I knew I could get away with it. I don't know why you even waste your time with her.
So she seems to have a pretty, I guess, cheery disposition towards most of the companions, except for Verse. Which is funny because I think they're, well, I guess she's not technically Scarlet Chorus, but her and Verse are both associated with the Scarlet Chorus on some level.
Oh, don't give me that look, Verse. I'm not gonna pretend to like someone I don't. At least you know where I stand. Subterfuge is so low class.
It's funny because it's her primary support skill.
Trust me, you manipulative worm. The feeling is mutual. And I find it ironic that you find subterfuge low class, considering how you get inside people's minds and fuck them over. If I could get away with it, I'd put a blade inside that pretty little head of yours and twist until your mind was as scrambled as those you invade.
How? vivid.
Siren turns to you, makes a little, see what I mean, gesture at verse.
She's rude, violent, base, impatient, and entirely pointless. You should keep much better company, Fatebinder. You asked me what I thought. I can't help it if the facts are painful to swallow.
She sighs and shrugs.
What do you need?
What do you think about the state of the world? What is there to say? Kyros' two major leaders can't stop themselves or their armies from fighting like a bunch of children. Neither of them seem capable of dealing with the rebels that are taking them down, which as far as I'm concerned, is how it should be. The less of the tiers infected by Kyros, the better. If we could eliminate the armies entirely, I consider that the true victory. Tell me what you know about edicts. Anything I say would be a wild guess. That's why I'm with you. You seem to have a connection to the power of this land, far beyond anything an Archon is capable of. It intrigues me. I want to learn what it is and harness it. Sadly, I don't have the magic needed to enact or break an edict. At least in my current state. Maybe if you got this helmet off my head. She gives you a knowing stare. You're an Archon. You must know something about edicts, Siren. You'd think that, wouldn't you? With all my training and education, Kyros left a very big void in it all. Almost like it was intentional.
What do you need? What do you need?
Alright, let's grab her
Well,
real
then,
quick.
let's go. If you're gonna teach me the wonders of the world, it's not gonna happen here.
Let's swap out with
Goodbye to you
verse.
too.
I'm going to look at her stuff, probably off camera, to get familiar with her talents. Let's ask my other companions about what they think of Siren.
Second Spire has awoken to your presence. This is fascinating, and I admit enviable. If it turns out your connection to the Spires invites death and woe, my jealousy might wane a bit. I've been mulling over that structure we found atop Vendrian's well. Would you be opposed to me studying the sculpture in closer detail? I'd perhaps work a spell or two near the structure. Simple cantrips of gravelight by which to read and inspect, but I will not poke or shove the thing in any way physical or mystical.
If you think it wise, of course.
Thank you. Next time we have a good moonlit night, I'd best settle in and see what sort of magic perturbations I can sense from the sculpture. What is it you need? Now we're working with the disfavored. You want my advice? My advice would be to get close to Graven Ash and plunge a poisoned shiv in his ear.
I will never
Ah, right. I'm speaking.
Hold on, I want to see if she has anything else to say.
What is it? Ask away. You know, I normally ask away. Ask away. We all know how to ask away.
So I'm just
I'm
going to
tired.
flip through all
Ask
this,
away.
make sure there's
I
nothing
know
new
a
to
group.
talk about. I'm
Ask
going to knock
away.
out all the companions this episode real fast. Alright, what do you make of Siren?
We've all heard legends of child archons, but Siren is the real thing. She's so very jaded for her age. But I'd be a sour ninny shitter too if I had a contraption stuck on my head limiting my greatness. I'll tell you this much. Her hatred of the voices of Narad is either genuine or a most fantastic act. But being a giant liar, I know another liar when I see one. And I'd wager this gripe is sincere.
I'm well aware that she may have already said something to me to make me more comfortable with her presence. If she did, how would I know she's influencing me or not? If she's playing with me, I applaud how well she's doing it.
Ask away.
Weird that last line wasn't voice acted. Alright, Lantry.
So, your latest acquisition has me thinking about the spires some more. By all accounts, they go as far back as the old walls. Over the centuries, the nobles of the tiers have claimed the spires, but they've only ever battled over the land at the ground level of the monuments. I've never seen the glyphs of a spire light up in all my years. Not until you show up. If this were an isolated incident, I'd be confused. But it seems the spires, plural, are somehow connected to you. What's your secret?
It is a surprise to me as well. A long sigh escapes Lantry, and he sticks his quill in his mouth, chewing on the tip. His head tilts from one side to the other, muttering inchoate half-words. I always want to know what you're thinking.
My mind is going back to Ascension Hall. I wonder if Graven Ash or Narot had claimed it as their own, would the spire come alive for either of them the way it did for you?
I'm interested in the Noble Scion one. It sounds a little conceited though, so I'm probably going to go with the number 2. The Edict of Execution was pushing for someone to claim Ascension Hall. Can't be coincidence.
Ah, such a clever child. I can't imagine the Overlord would ever carelessly word an edict. You are right. I don't imagine Kyros leaves anything to mere coincidence.
Do you think the spires are connected to Kyros in some fashion?
If you're asking if Kyros built them or controls them, no. They predate all mention of Kyros, and I'm sure if Kyros could control the other spires, that fact would be shamelessly flaunted. But it occurs to me that perhaps Kyros didn't have a connection, but does now, thanks to your actions.
Are there stories of awakened spires elsewhere in Tyranny?
There are other spires, and I've heard of notable figures trying to build monuments atop or astride the spires, but nothing I've read matches the mystical connection you've made with the spire.
Let's talk further.
I am nothing if not... I am not... and I'd be happy. I am nothing... Well, you might want to ask a more soldierly type about the armies, but do you want to talk about the Archons or other mages?
What do you know of the Mage Guilds? More than I will readily admit. Which guild? So this is all new. Alright, let's just knock it out. Screw it. What do you know of the Earthshakers? It takes a strange bird to wish to emulate Karen, Archon of Stone. What do I know? The whole cult sprung up to worship the man. This cult became known as the Earthshakers Guild. Even their weak imitations of his magic can fill the land with tremors. Karen answered to Graven Ash, meaning the Earthshakers are military allies of the disfavored. At least that's how it was. Karen's treachery demanded retribution from Kyros. This has destroyed the reputation of the Earthshaker Guild. Many assume a traitorous teacher would breed traitorous disciples. Tell me about the Forgebound. The Forgebound are a guild from the Northern Empire. Their magic is a bit different from the sigils you or I know. They study a slower, more rigid style of magic that they use to become one with their forging tools. The Forgebound know the secret of turning grey rock into fine iron, and none have yet replicated this feat of craftsmanship. What they do is truly unique, and they teach their craft by practice and lecture. Little of it is written down. What are the Blood Chanters? The Blood Chanters are a motley. To call them a proper guild insults all their traditions. Most of their number were members of the School of Wild Wrath, but they sold their loyalty to the Voice of Nerat. The Blood Chanters Guild, the personal mage cabal of the Voices of Nerat, Archon of Secrets, are not a storied institution, but rather a very recent organization. Founded just prior to the conquest, the Blood Chanters draw their magic from the sigil of Siren, Archon of Song, which they draw their spells of passion, fear, frenzy, and other emotional manipulations, or from the fire magic of Thousand Embers, Archon of Fire, as practiced by the now defunct School of Wild Wrath. They brought with them their fire magic, adopted from the long-dead Thousand Embers, Archon of Fire. Guess it's a little surprise that fire mages would find a welcome home in the course. One of the most influential but briefly lived Archons born in the Tiers, Thousand Embers, 26 TR to 73 TR. Archon of Fire had a knack for making things combust, and strong motivation to assist his fellow man, a fact of great relief to most, as none of the local lords could pay their soldiers enough to apprehend him, had he cared to use his powers for exhortation or destruction. Obsessed more with writing, he penned a number of exploring Inner Fire, the human drive to eat, reproduce, and destroy, containing a great deal of introspection on his own use of fire. When he disappeared in 73 TR, it took all of 3 years for a cabal of mages to appear, claiming to be the true inheritors of his power. The School of Wild Wrath had a rough understanding of Thousand Embers' command of fire, but rough was enough. Fire is not a medium that calls for finesse. While the School of Wild Wrath have long told the story that Thousand Embers is literally living as a Thousand Embers, waiting to reconstruct himself when the time is right. A few of the Fate Binders who work very closely with Blood and Mark happen to know that the Archon of Shadows made the rare gesture of inviting him 3 times to join with Kyros, before offering an ultimatum ending in or die. The fire is now one of their tricks. The real trick is their magic of passion, frenzy, and fear. Such magic is based on the sigil of Siren, Archon of Song. Worthless peasants who use borrowed power to expand the realm of an undeserving monster. I won't be happy until the whole group is obliterated. Are there other guilds in the Tiers? The big 3, Ink, Tide, and Wrath, pushed out most of the other schools ages ago. History makes note of the Cutters, the School of Flowering Winter, and a few others that did not survive the little wars our schools would wage. But I know little of these footnote schools.
Well, I am nothing if not a I know everything. I am nothing if not a I know everything. Of course. How can I help?
I know anything about the region we're in.
The spires predate us all.
Like, we've already
of
talked
course.
about that.
How can I help?
Traveling.
Are you asking for an objective assessment? Or is this your way of saying you want to gossip?
What do you think of traveling with Siren?
As a chronicler of history, I am most honored to have the chance to travel alongside a luminary. I can write down her speech word for word, letter for letter, and proclaim it back, but yet the words lack her charm. This supports my hypothesis that her power manifests by the actual sound of her voice, and less of the particulars the words chosen. Fascinating.
So, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying my words have no weight or significance, and it's simply my magic that makes me powerful. I've got a song for you, Lantry. Do you want to hear it?
What? It's high praise.
Alright, then verse.
Good day, Fatebinder. It's always nice. What do you need?
You're the wrong person. All the way up there? What is she doing all the way up there? Alright, we'll talk to Verse, and then that'll be it for this episode. Our gang is building quite the little collection of spires, aren't we? The voice of Nerat was never one for keeping strongholds, but I can definitely see the appeal. Why doesn't the voices like strongholds? Because there's no point in standing still. The voices prefers to keep his forces busy and on the move, with the only restful hours between dusk and dawn. Besides, fighters in motion are less likely to rise up and challenge authority. Safety in numbers. Once you get people hunkering down to discuss their problems, suddenly everyone has a reason to kill the closest gang boss. What do you think of these spires? They're big, but make no mistake. A determined army could knock one down if they got enough shovels and picks together. Don't be so quick to assume that you're invincible. As to what they are, I try not to ask those sorts of questions.
What do you need?
I find myself in need of an accomplished killer.
I suppose I'd hate to deprive you. Let's be off.
I'm actually going to cancel that.
At your service. What do you need? What did you have in mind?
Let's ask about our travel companions. What do you think of Siren? Take this in the spirit in which it's intended. If I had her kind of power at that age, the last thing I would do is take orders from you. You may think you're leading her around, but it might be the opposite. Would any of us even know the difference? All I need to know about Siren is that she scares Kyros. That pretty much says it all. Yeah, that was a crazy story. She almost had Kyros kill him or herself. Huh. Alright, I'm going to call it here. Next episode, we have a few things to go over. We have a missive to read. We have new magic to explore. I'm going to go over her talent tree off camera to see what direction I want to take her in. And then we have some NPCs here to talk to, and that might be all we have time for. I don't know, we'll see. Either way, thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.